The first cry of the general's daughter did not slice through the morning like a trumpet of victory, as everyone had expected. Instead, it drifted into the pale dawn like a fragile question whispered into a world too loud to hear it. Outside the hospital windows, the sun was rising over the city in soft gold, as if blessing the day with promise. While inside one quiet room, a truth heavier than any battlefield settled on the shoulders of a man known for never bowing to anything at all. General Alaric Stonewood, whose name alone could still a room, stood rigid beside the narrow bed where his wife lay exhausted and pale, and in his arms was a tiny child wrapped in white cloth and silence. The doctors had spoken gently, carefully, but the words were final and cruel in their calm. The baby girl was born blind, and just like that, the man who had commanded armies and rewritten maps found himself defeated by something he could not see, could not fight, could not outrun. Before we go any further into this story of light and shadows, heartbreak and miracles, let me gently ask you something from the heart. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the quiet miracles that happen when we least expect them, please take a moment to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Kindness matters, because stories like this grow only when hearts gather around them. The hospital room was bathed in morning light, the kind that usually feels clean and forgiving, but the day it seemed to highlight every fear hiding in the corners. Alaric had always been a man of motion, of certainty, of command. Yet now he stood still, staring down at his daughter, as if searching her tiny face for answers she could not give. Her name was Seraphine, chosen long before anyone knew she would never see the sky that greeted her birth. His wife, Maribel, reached out with trembling fingers to touch the baby's cheek, her expression caught between fierce love and aching sorrow, as though her heart had expanded and cracked at the same time. In that moment, the general was not a soldier, not a leader, not a symbol of power. He was simply a father trying to understand how the world he trusted could give him something so precious, wrapped in such uncertainty. Days passed in a blur of whispered consultations, careful footsteps, and paperwork thick with words that sounded like walls rather than doors. Yet every morning, the sunlight still poured through the windows with stubborn insistence, brushing across Seraphine's face, even though she could not return its gaze. Nurses came and went with soft smiles and measured voices, but one nurse in particular lingered longer than the others. Her name was Amara Voss, a woman whose presence carried a strange calm, like the steady hush of a river that has learned patience through centuries. She moved through the ward, not with haste, but with intention, her eyes always alert, her hands gentle but sure, as though she understood that healing was not just a science but a conversation between hands and hope. Amara noticed things others overlooked. She noticed how Seraphine's tiny fingers curled tighter when her father held her, as if memorizing his strength through touch. She noticed how Maribel would hum softly during the brightest hours of the day, as if trying to replace sight with sound and rhythm. And she noticed something else too, something subtle and unsettling, the way Seraphine's eyes, though clouded, still seemed to follow warmth, still responded to shifts in brightness, still flickered with a quiet insistence that maybe, just maybe, the darkness was not complete. Alaric tried to be strong in the way the world expected him to be strong, with silence and resolve and a jaw set against grief. Yet late in the afternoons, when sunlight stretched long shadows across the hospital floor, he would find himself sitting alone beside his daughter's cradle, watching light dance across a face that could not see it, and something inside him would fracture. He would imagine her growing up, unable to see the medals on his chest, the flags he had defended, the very expressions that crossed his face when he tried to hide his fear. And in those moments, the battles he had won felt unbearably small. But daylight has a way of insisting on its presence, even in rooms heavy with sorrow. As Seraphine grew, she began to respond more vividly to the world around her, turning her head toward warmth, calming at the sound of birds through open windows, smiling in response to vibrations she felt through touch. It was Amara who began bringing her closer to the windows each morning, letting the sun brush across her skin like a gentle greeting. It was Amara who spoke quietly of stories where darkness was not the end, but the beginning of a deeper way of seeing. And it was Amara who, one bright midday when dust danced like golden sparks in the air, did something that would forever alter the course of that child's life. Tucked into the pocket of her uniform was something small, delicate, and extraordinary. It was not a medical device, not a machine of steel and glass, but something far more ancient and rare, a set of handcrafted lenses, not ordinary lenses, but prismatic lenses, infused with layered crystal and organic minerals. An experimental creation born not of corporate labs, but of a quiet inventor who believed light could be taught to bend not just through physics, but through empathy. Amara had come into possession of them through a story almost as unlikely as the miracle they would soon attempt. She had not told anyone, not even the doctors, because sometimes belief begins in the space between what is allowed and what is possible. That morning, as sunlight spilled across the room like a blessing too large to contain, Amara held the lenses in her palm, watching how they fractured the light into subtle rainbows, how they softened its glare, how they seemed to whisper that light was not just something you see, but something you feel. She hesitated, because hope can be terrifying when it has already been broken once. Yet she looked at Seraphine, so small and unaware of how much the world already loved her, and something steady and brave rose inside her. With careful movements, guided not by certainty, but by reverence, Amara brought the lenses to Seraphine's eyes, not forcing, not pressing, simply allowing the soft, filtered light to meet the fragile pathways waiting behind them. For a moment, nothing happened. The room held its breath. The sun seemed to pause in the sky, and then, so subtly it could have been missed by anyone not watching with a heart already open, Seraphine's eyelids fluttered and her tiny hand lifted, not randomly, but toward the window, toward the warmth, toward the light itself. It was not a miracle in the way movies portray miracles, with sudden clarity and tears of joy bursting forth like fireworks. It was quieter than that, more sacred. Seraphine did not suddenly see the world in sharp colors and lines, but something shifted, something opened. The darkness that had once been absolute became textured, layered, alive. Light became a presence, not just a sensation. And in that small gesture of reaching toward brightness, the impossible softened into possibility. Alaric, who had returned just in time to witness this silent turning of fate, did not speak. He did not move. He simply stood, a man carved from steel and scars, watching his daughter reach for something she had never known before. And in that moment, every battlefield he had ever walked across seemed to fall away, replaced by this quiet room filled with dust, sunlight, and the fragile promise of a new beginning. From that day forward, Seraphine's world changed not in leaps, but in luminous steps. Each morning brought new responses, new awareness, new moments where she turned her face toward light, as if greeting an old friend. Doctors were cautious, as doctors must be, but even they could not deny the transformation unfolding before them. The lenses were studied, examined, whispered about in corridors like a secret, too beautiful to fully explain. And Amara, who had once been just another nurse moving quietly through the ward, became a symbol of something larger, that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come not from power or prestige, but from compassion, paired with courage. As Seraphine grew, she learned to navigate her world not only with her eyes, but with an awareness that seemed to extend beyond sight. She felt the warmth of the sun through open windows in the afternoon. She recognized her parents by the rhythm of their footsteps and the cadence of their breathing. She reached for colors before she fully knew what colors were. guided by instinct and light and something deeper that had been awakened that morning. Alaric, too, was transformed. He began to walk more slowly, to listen more carefully, to notice the way sunlight changed the city throughout the day. The man who had once measured life in victories and defeats began measuring it instead in moments. The way Seraphine laughed when a breeze brushed her face. The way Maribel's eyes softened each time their daughter reached for something new. The way Amara's quiet presence continued to ripple through their lives long after the lenses had done their work. The story is not about a general or a nurse or even a miracle hidden in crystalline light. It is about the way hope finds its way through the smallest cracks. It is about the way hope finds its way through the smallest cracks. It is about how sometimes the most unbelievable thing is not that darkness can be broken, but that love always seems to know exactly where to place the light. And now, just before we reach the ending of this story, I have a small but heartfelt request for you. If this journey is stirring something inside you, if it is reminding you of your own quiet battles and gentle victories, please take a moment to comment below. Share what this story makes you feel. Your words might be the light someone else is searching for. Years later, Seraphine would walk through gardens at noon, her face lifted toward the sun, seeing the world not with perfect clarity, but with a depth that many with perfect sight never achieve. She would grow into a young woman whose vision was shaped as much by empathy as by light, who noticed the tremble in a leaf, the hush between notes in a song, the unspoken emotions passing through a room like invisible currents. And in her presence, people often felt seen in ways they had never felt before. The general would grow older, his medals gathering dust, his fame fading into quiet respect, but his greatest pride would never hang on the wall or shine in a ceremony. It would walk beside him in daylight, her hand resting in his, her steps steady and sure, guided by a world she had once been told she would never know. And Amara Voss, the nurse who pulled out something unbelievable, would never claim credit, never seek recognition. She would continue walking hospital corridors, carrying not just tools and training, but the unshakable belief that every life is more than its diagnosis, and every shadow is an invitation for light to enter. If this story touched your heart, if it made you pause, breathe, or remember something precious, please like, share, and engage with this video. Let this story travel, not just through screens, but through lives, because sometimes the smallest stories carry the greatest light. And as this tale gently closes, let it leave you with this: even in the brightest days and the darkest nights, kindness is the truest vision we will ever have.